CBSE Board, Class 11, History, Chapter 1, Part 18, Audio by Renee Matthew. A bit of information was given on the interesting person, Gilgamesh, the ruler. Now, after he went in search for mortality, he was not able to find it. He came back to his place, that is, Uruk. And he consoled himself. He started consoling himself along the city wall. He started walking back and fro. It's like this is something which we do as humans even now. When we are tensed, people will take a stroll up and down. Yes? So he admired the foundation. So as he was walking up and down, he admired the foundations made of fired bricks that he had put into place. He only was the architect behind the temples, the magnificent temple, and he just took a look at it. And he understood how intrinsically he had designed, how carefully he had done and ingrained all these fired bricks in place. So on the city wall of Uruk, the long tale of heroism and endeavor fizzles out because of these two kings, Enmerkar and Gilgamesh. He does not even say that when he dies, his sons will outlive him. He does not say that. And he was a great hero also. He takes consolation in the city that his people had built. He was so in love and sincere with the city that was maintained by him and his people. Now the most important part, the legacy of writing, which was transferred. It is the legacy which was transferred by the Mesopotamians to the world, not to their own people. So while we take a look at the narratives which were dug from the Mesopotamian undergrounds, we can see that most of the narratives were transmitted orally, and science requires written text as evidence so that scholars and generations of people can actually build on it. Because earlier we saw that all these epics and all the storytelling was done orally. Nobody wrote it. Okay. It was of course recorded as tablets only by skilled scribes. So science required something as document. They wanted some progression in writing. And the greatest legacy of Mesopotamia to the world is its scholarly tradition of time and mathematics. Time and mathematics, very important discovery. The legacy passed on. So around 1800 BC, tablets with multiplication and division, tables, square root tables, and all these things were found out. Tables of compound interest. Really surprising, right? How did they find out all these things? And even in the earlier tablets that we got from Sumeria and the Akkadians, we can see that in spite of the diagrammatic representation of the Sumerian script, some pictures were there which counted something, counting and numerical expression of things were given on the tablets. So the square root of 2 was given like this. And if you really work out, you will see that the answer is very close to accuracy. So though the correct answer is this is the answer that you get when you work out. So try it out for yourself. And students were asked to solve problems such as the following. That was also found on the tablet. So we can see that education was also springing up on a very small scale. For example, a field of area such and such is covered 1 finger deep in water. So that was the kind of measurement that they had. Find out the volume of water. Not accurate, but still, this is how they gave their problems and solutions. Another problem which is very interesting is the division of the year into 12 months according to the revolution of the moon around the earth. The division of the month into 4 weeks. All these kind of division, and the hour into 16 minutes. All that we take for granted in our daily lives has come to us from the Mesopotamians. 12 months, the division of the month into 4 weeks, the day into 24 hours, the hour into 16 minutes. So all these things were the discoveries of the Mesopotamians. Very interesting. Now, great successors like Alexander the Great. These time divisions were adopted by the successors like Alexander the Great, when he took over the Roman world, and it was transmitted to the Roman world also after that, then to the world of Islam, and then to medieval Europe. Then only it came to Europe. Okay, so everything was transmitted to these people, the great leaders. And whenever there was a solar or lunar eclipse, their occurrence was noted according to year, month and day. Everything was recorded just like that. So they had a very good grip on the knowledge of year, month and day. And they were very particular about the position of stars, constellations in the night sky. This is something that the present generation or we miss for the past maybe 25 years, except for the people who study astronomy and such kind of things, astrology. We will not be able to read the stars and constellations, but people in the olden days were so familiar with the position of the stars, even a normal man could record and tell what it really meant. Now, what were some of the achievements? None of these momentous Mesopotamian achievements would have been possible without writing. So writing, it's only because of writing that all these things were recorded. And also the urban institution of schools came up only because of writing. What did the students do in school? Students could read, they copied earlier written tablets. Okay, that is how they learned. Where some boys were trained to become not record keepers for the administration, but intellectuals who could build on the work of their predecessors. It's not that you just copy down everything, but they will be given the previous records and they will have to very intellectually work on it and build on the work of the predecessor. What a task, right? And we would be mistaken if we think that the preoccupation with the urban world of Mesopotamian is a modern phenomenon. No, it is not modern. It is not something which is so modern after progression took place. Let us look finally at the two early attempts to locate and preserve the text. So how much of importance they gave to preserve text? How much of work they did to preserve text? In the Iron Age, the Assyrians of the north created an empire. You should note that the Assyrians were very powerful and they wanted to expand their territory. So they created an empire which was at its height between 720 and 610 BC, and it stretched as far west as Egypt. The state economy of Assyria was so predatory, that is, they were so good in extracting labor and tribute in the form of food, animals, metal, craft items from a vast subject population. So they just extracted to make their economy so tight, firm, and expanded it. Now the great Assyrian kings were very powerful and they were immigrants. You should remember that this particular group immigrated. They were not they were not the inhabitants of any city there in Mesopotamia. And they acknowledged or lived in the southern region, Babylonia, as a center of high culture, and the last of them, Ashurbanipal. This particular king, all of them immigrated, the great lineage immigrated, and they resided in Babylonia, and it is from their power of wealth that they take over. Now what this particular king did was, Ashurbanipal, he collected a library at his capital, Nineveh in the north. Okay, so he was very particular about having a library in Nineveh in the north. He made very great effort to gather tablets on history, epics, omen literature, astrology, because they were all superstitious and they believed in omen, astrology, hymns, poems. And he also sent his scribes south to find old tablets. He was very good in gathering all the tablets and he wanted to form a library, a kind of archive, where it will be collected, gathered and kept together. So scribes were sent to the south to gather the old tablets. Now the scribes who were sent to the south were trained by this particular king to read and write in schools, where they all had to copy tablets by the dozen. There were towns in Babylonia. So they could read, write, and you should remember that all the scribes were not well versed in reading and writing, but they were taught by going to schools. And there were a lot of towns in Babylonia with huge collection of tablets. And that was created and acquired fame also. It was created by the king, and now also we can actually excavate it. Look at the library, the form of library which was made for all the tablets to be kept. This is the structure of the basic library, and the broken tablets which was excavated. And this is a Sumerian script, the first script. It ceased to be spoken after 1800 BC, and after that we saw that Assyrian and Akkadian were taking over Sumerian. And it continued to be taught in schools even though it was not spoken after 1800 BC. It was so important. So it was taught in schools through vocabulary, text, signed list, bilingual, both Sumerian and Akkadian tablets, etc. So this was actually taught in schools. Look at the script. It is not very easy. So even in 650 BC, cuneiform tablets written as far back as 2000 BC were intelligible. So cuneiform tablets, I told you, it is not like the consonants and vowels that we have in English or any other language. They depended on syllables. And Assurbanipal's men knew where to look for early tablets or their copies. So the king had trained the men in such a way that they will go and find these tablets, gather it, they will read it and find out what is written. And that was the effort which was taken to collect and gather and get all the tablets under these topics. Copies were also made of important timelines of important text. Copies were made, such as the Epic of Gilgamesh, and the copier stating his name. The copier will have to state his name and also the day on which he wrote, the date and everything. And some tablets ended with a reference to Assurbanipal because they were so indebted to the king. And look at the tablet here. This is the king. I, Assurbanipal. This is how they wrote. King of the universe, king of Assyria, on whom the gods bestowed vast intelligence, who could acquire the reconduct details of scholarly erudition. I wrote down on tablets the wisdom of the gods, and I checked and collated the tablets, collecting and gathering. Okay, I placed them for the future in the library of the temple of my god, Nabu at Nineveh, for my life and the well-being of my soul, and to sustain the foundations of my royal throne. So he knew that someday somebody will find out all these collections, so foresighted. And he believed that the wisdom of the gods were bestowed on him. And he was given the particular duty and responsibility of collecting all these scholarly things and keeping it for the future generation. And after this, a timeline is given, which is very important. You will have to take a look at the timeline. And the timeline will give you an insight into the important happenings in the chapter. But apart from that, it is good if you create your own timeline apart from the text, because you will have tidbits of information also along the timeline, which will really help you in understanding the text better.